the middle of the magazine, there's a huge photo of Swami. And this photo was Swami's close-up of a face, even bigger than, real life. And I was opening and, I was just curious. But when I went to the middle of the page, his face came up from the paper and went down like 3D, like a hologram. A few days after I was in Puerto Party, I stayed there for 3 months and a half. But maybe, the first couple of weeks, I started reading the Ramakatha that he wrote. Shortly after that, I had a dream of Rama. And of Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana. And this dream was so live.
Welcome to Sai SOUL 100. Our guest today is Sister Paula Martinez, who's joining us from Washington, D.C. Sairam, Sister Paula, thank you for joining Sai SOUL 100.
Sairam.
Thank you. Please share your story.
I met Swami through a friend in Colombia. I am from Colombia, South America, born and raised in Bogota. And there I was in college and or university, and a friend of mine knew that I saw auras and was interested on healing and energy healing. And she told me to meet a shaman that was coming from Ecuador. He was Colombian, but he was living there. And long story short, I went and see him just to discuss things. And he was doing some healing, so he asked me to wait on a little waiting room in the place where he was. What he told me was, just look around and here, have this magazine. You can read it. I'm going to be 20 minutes or something, 30 minutes. And this was a Sai magazine in Argentina. They have a beautiful Sai magazine, which is like 30 pages, color magazine. And always in the middle of the page, in the middle of the magazine, there's a huge photo of Swami. And this photo was Swami's close-up of a face, even bigger than, real life. And I was opening and, I was just curious. But when I went to the middle of the page, his face came up from the paper and went down like 3D, like a hologram. And I was like, oh, wow. And to make a long story short, I read the whole magazine page, cover to the end in that night. And I said like, oh my gosh, I have to meet this guy. So, so I went to a Sai center. It was the first time we went to bhajans, somewhere in Spanish, somewhere in Sanskrit, but the arati back then was in Sanskrit, and with the camphor and everything and the flame. And the minute that started, my heart chakra just went like expanded, and I don't remember much after that. I remember just like coming back home. Swami says he's God or like Jesus Christ walking on earth. I want to go see him. As a parenthesis, when I was little, I used to tell my mom always like, why wasn't I born, when Jesus Christ was here? Why wasn't I born? I asked my dad as a graduation gift from college for a trip. And he said yes. And he thought, I would come to US or Canada or Europe, which is kind of what, Europe is what people wanted. But instead I said like, I want to go to India. Swami made it possible. From the moment I was in the airport by myself in Colombia, in the gate, all the way to Italy, and then Italy, Bombay, and then Bombay, Bangalore, I was chaperoned by someone. Him, of course, in different forms. A couple in front of me in the airplane from Bombay to Bangalore. They looked Indian, they were dressed like Indian, but when they're coming out of the airplane, when you open up the compartments for your carry-ons, they spoke perfect Spanish. I was like, where are you guys from? And like, well, we're Venezuelans. And they offered me a taxi ride, and I didn't have a taxi. So he literally, with them, I was dropped off at the Ganesha gate. So that's one later. A few days after I was in Puerto Party, I stayed there for 3 months and a half. But maybe, the first couple of weeks, I started reading the Ramakatha that he wrote. And it was fascinating. I was like, I really loved it. I kind of placed myself in those times and kind of imagined this. And shortly after that, I had a dream of Rama. and of Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana. And this dream was so life. I mean, first of all, he was the most beautiful human being as Rama I've ever seen. It was like he has this presence and this love, and oh my gosh, it's like oh. So in this dream, I come to him, and it's like, oh, like Rama is like, and he says, pure heart, like pure heart. And I said, like, yes, yes, pure heart. And he just very stern, he says, like, he just goes like, no, pure heart. Like you don't, he didn't say no, but he says, he says like, no, like pure heart with his finger. And what I understood is like, I don't have a pure heart yet. And I was like, yes, Rama, yes. And the third time he says like, as a command, pure heart. And I was like, okay, I just, kept quiet. And I, I think I woke up and I was in bliss. And this was in Puttaparthi. And I remember going to the darshan or going, I did the canteen seva and then to darshan. I was, kind of roaming and, pure heart. Like, what do you mean, Swami? Like, what do you mean pure heart? Like, I don't know what, okay, whatever. There, like, be mindful that this was my first time in Puttaparthi, that I've just met Swami. I've probably read one book, and this was my second book, the Ramakatha. So I didn't know about, all the teachings of Swami. So in darshan, I go to the library, or no, the bookstore. And as I was entering, there's this book with a yellow cover by Dr. John Galway that is Purifying the Heart. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I took it, of course, and I bought it and I read it. And this book is amazing because it teaches very practical ways on how, what Baba says, how to get rid of your false self or your ego. It's a step of how to practice with day-to-day life. What you need to work on. We all know that Swami says, and I want to read a quote. God is not involved in either rewards or punishment. He only reflects, resounds, and reacts. He is the eternal, unaffected witness. So God or divinity only reflects, resounds, and reacts. And that is the basis of that book. And basically says, like, what do you practice with? Well, whatever's there, because it's a reflection and a reaction of you. So if someone is bugging you or something is, annoying you, you just have to, instead of reacting to it, you have to try to calm down and say, like, what is that reflecting of me? So I'll just give a couple of examples. But my examples are personal, and I can give faith that it works. So when I was in one of my first jobs, one very important job, I was promoted or changed into a new role. And I found myself under a boss that, she was a good boss, but she had preferences, right? She preferred to work with someone out of the, let's say, all of the specialists that we were working with her. And so that was one thing. And then the other thing is that every time I've submitted a paper or a presentation, normally presentations, she would redline everything, like blood redlining, and I had to do it again. So there was nothing, never good enough for her. And, at the beginning, I was like, okay, I can do this better, I can learn. But, after 6 months, it was like nonstop. And I was like, to the point that it was like really annoying me. And so instead of, kind of fighting and trying to complain and, going to HR, I said, like, okay, what is she reflecting? Like I said, like, Swami, please tell me, what is she reflecting that I need to work on? And I mean, I'm going to tell you right now what it was, but this took me easily 2 or 3 months of daily reflection. So after 2 or 3 months of asking and praying and saying, I realized that she was the first time that I was not being recognized. So I was an A+ student. In my school, in my kindergarten, at sports, I was always recognized, and I was used to being recognized. And part of my personality was being recognized. So here's the first authority figure that comes and does not recognize me. And I was like, okay. So why does it bother me that she doesn't recognize me? Because of this and this and this, she does this and this. It's like, and after, I guess, a couple of other days after that, in praying and meditating, I said, like, so what if she doesn't recognize me? I'm not going to, I'm not going to be less or more than if she does. It's like I'm still what I am, and I do my work because it's God's work. So I decided that I was like, okay, I'm not, I'm just not going to bother, and not in a bad way. If you know what I mean. I'm not going to be, whatever she says, whether she recognizes me or not, it shouldn't affect me. That's kind of the conclusion. And so the next assignment was done, or whatever, the next PowerPoint. And I was, I sent it to her via email, and she said, like, okay, Paula, can we, comment on the presentation? And I was already ready for the feedback. It happened every week, negative. And for the first time, she literally says, like, well done. I like your presentation a lot. And I was like, I was so shocked, because Swami says that in the book. And when you change, your reality changes. And I was like, oh my gosh. I stopped seeing her as someone who had favoritisms, as someone who was always, denigrating my work. She completely transformed, but really I was the one who had transformed. And, your true self, the ego is the one who needs to be recognized. Your true self, it doesn't, the beautiful self you are doesn't need that. The other example that I remember is when I came to US in 2014. I started looking for a job, and it was really, really difficult. Really difficult. I just didn't know the system, and but also, so I guess I sent a lot of resumes, I applied to a lot of things, and it just didn't work. And I was getting very frustrated, and I was crying at some point. But again, I said, like, Swami, this is reflecting something. Let me know what it is. And it took me again a couple of months, because that's the longest I've searched for a job. And I was like, what is it? Is it that, A, B, whatever, how you kind of, oh, that's the other thing. Like, the reflection is never a straightforward reflection. It's something that you have to, it's not evident, but it is a reflection. So here the reflection was, I was attached to my status quo. So, or my, education, or how do you call it, my status, basically. So I studied in Colombia's best university. I worked for, like, one of the top organizations, like a 500 Fortune over there. I was bilingual or trilingual. Like, it was, I had the luxury to pick my job in Colombia. So it was really easy to get a job. It was really easy because it's just almost like if you were out of Harvard, and, like, people are just kind of saying, please come work for us. So I was like, okay, interesting. And then, so the attachment there is, again, I was attached to where I have studied and where I have worked. And I thought I was, this great professional just because of it. And here I come, and nobody has heard of Universidad de los Andes, or nobody has heard of the Corona organization, and nobody cares. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So, I was attached. I started working in this, like, okay, and I don't remember how specifically it happens, but shortly after, I'm saying like 1 or 2 days after that realization, and I prayed to Swami, just help me get rid of this. A headhunter called, and they took my resume, they chopped it and rearranged it, and I started getting calls, and I got a job interview within a week, and then 2 or 3 job interviews within 3 weeks, and I was it was literally miraculous, like, I was like, after struggling for so long, it's like, it just changed like that. Again, when, and it wasn't going to repeat itself, but I think that's one of the invitations that Swami gives us every day is, if whatever it bothers you, if it's, I don't know, the noise, the traffic, your kids, could be whatever, what you see on TV, could be a colleague, I think it's there to teach us, and if you don't take the teaching, it will come again. And so that's how I think he's been purifying my heart, like an onion, like peeling an onion, one attachment at a time. And there's a lot of attachments still, but I think if I look back, he's done a great work at transforming my heart specifically. And I only want, that's the other thing I learned is, like, you can only transform yourself. People may ask you what you're doing. People close to you may, but you can only choose to change yourself.
Sairam, Sister Paula. This is actually a beautiful story, and the segment is actually very, very nice, nicely well put together as well. Would you be able to share a few of your other stories with Swami?
So I don't know when, but this was, I don't know. Well, at some point you read about Swami saying it's good to repeat the name of God in Namasmara. So I was intrigued by it, and I took it. Oh, yes. So I started with I started with Om Sri Sairam, and then I started, and that didn't kind of catch. And then I started with Om Sri Satya Sai Baba, Om Sri Satya Sai Baba. And eventually I told him, like, this isn't working, help me out. And at some point I started repeating Om Namah Shivaya. And I repeated Om Namah Shivaya for many, many years, like 8 or 9 years. After 8 years of repeating Om Namah Shivaya, a miracle happened. I was in a silent retreat in Portugal, and they were telling this was a devotee of Ramana Maharshi, which Swami talks about a lot, about who you are and the who am I, and questioning who am I or what am I. And they were explaining, a million times, the practice of, you have a thought, you see the thought going through, you ask who is that thought from, or who is this thought appearing to, and you say me and who am I, and then there's silence. And another thought comes, and so on and so forth. But you stay in the silence, and you don't push it. If another thought comes, you keep on saying, who is this thought from? Who am I? So I was doing that, and I didn't get a silence. I was like, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Who is this thought from? Like, who am I? Om Namah Shivaya. So I raised the question to the person who was leading this, again, a Ramana Maharshi devotee. And he said, I was very lucky that he got my question, but he says, like, so I told him just exactly what I told him, like, I just don't get the silence, sorry, I just get Om Namah Shivaya. I've been repeating it for 8 years or 9 years. It's the first thing, I woke up, it was repeating, I went to sleep, it was repeating, it was nonstop. And it didn't matter, right? But for this exercise specifically, it was like, I just don't get it. And he said to me, who is repeating Om Namah Shivaya? And I was like, well, I don't know. Like, he said, are you repeating Om Namah Shivaya? I was like, no, it's automatic. And he repeated again. He asked again, who is repeating Om Namah Shivaya? And I just said, like, well, I don't know. And at that moment, he said, God is repeating Om Namah Shivaya. And in that moment, it just stopped. And there was so much silence. And ever since, to go into silence, all I have to do is doing Om Namah Shivaya, and even now. So that was a great gift, because I experienced for the first time what is to have a silent mind, and it's feasible and it's beautiful, and that's really what that's really who our true nature is, and the true language of God is silence. That's what Swami has said, and that is the silence.
Sairam, Sister Paula, thank you for sharing these beautiful stories, particularly you beginning your journey at college days, as a youngster, questioning, and then finding that magazine. It's amazing. You have a whole magazine already dedicated to Swami, Sai magazine, that you came into your hands, and then when you opened that middle picture, that experience of Swami coming directly at you. I mean, that's something that is just unbelievable for you to have witnessed it. And then Swami escorting you all the way to Parthi.
India. Yes.
That's amazing. I just can't imagine that, Indian looking couple speaking Spanish and making you feel at home, Swami speaking the language, making you feel comfortable and saying, come, let's go to Parthi together, and taking you to Parthi and having so many experiences with Swami. And I just love how a simple book called Purifying the Heart, right after your dream, it comes into your hands, right? So
yeah,
it's
the same day. It's like,
there's the dream and there's reality, but they're all the same for you. You're reading this Ramakatha Rasavahini, right? And then you get a dream. And in that
Rama.
dream of Rama telling you purify, pure heart.
Pure heart.
Pure heart. And then you get the book that says Purifying the Heart, which you ended up translating into Spanish as well, which is so wonderful, right? And that every chapter in that book seems to have spoken to you and little by little purifying that heart. So it's not accident that this book came into your
No,
hands.
not at all. It's a blessing. Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I just love, finally, you were sharing your beautiful story of Om Namah Shivaya and the power of Namasmarana. All of us strive to have name of Lord inherently going on within ourselves, whether we have control over it or not. But that comes with worldly practice, right?
Yes. So I don't know if I mentioned that, but at the beginning it was hard. I mean, after 9 years, it was automatic, but at the beginning, it's you take practice. It's like there's a bad thought, Om Namah Shivaya. There's some Om Namah Shivaya. You want to criticize someone, Om Namah Shivaya. You want to do whatever, Om Namah Shivaya. And it just at the beginning it was hard, but if you follow your guru, because that's what Swami says, basically it works.
Yeah. And then now Om Namah Shivaya, it's coming from God himself. And that's such a beautiful realization.
Yes, it is. It's I mean, everything is God, really. He's everything. I mean, we are everything. We are one with him. And he has said this, right? Like if you point your vision outwards, you see the ego and the jiva and all the world and all the things. But if you turn it inward, the same vision, you see God. But everything is really one. It just depends what you do with, the attention or the vision.
Yes. And finally, I just love how everything that happens in our lives, people, experiences, is really a reflection of who we are. And if something is not going our way, it's you found out that you have to go within, look inside and see, identify what it is that you need to change. And as soon as you change, the problem, issues, people, those attitudes, mindsets of those people who are bothering us, that changes. Or it goes away, right? And I love the statement that you made. When you change, your reality changes.
Yeah, because the reality is a reflection of yourself. So if you change it, it changes. And that's why I could have taken the book's examples, which are great, but I brought my own ones because I've lived it. And once you experience it, it's like, yep, it works. It's just, you have to do the homework, but it works.
Yes. Sairam, Sister Paula, thank you so much for joining Sai Soul 100.
Thank you.
Sairam, dear listeners, thank you for listening to Sai Soul 100 with Sister Paula Martinez. I'm Prabha Swaminathan. Until next time, Jai Sairam.